Welcome back to the $20 build series. Ooh, my hands are awful high. To the $20 build series on the M41 Walker Bulldog by Tamiya in 1/35 scale, which you already knew. But I have to tell you anyway because I'll forget, maybe. As you can tell, some work has been made, some work has been done, progress has been made, kinda. Now, I've gone ahead and I've done one drive sprocket, both idler wheels, and 8 of the 10 road wheels. I'll do 2 of the road wheels on camera, show you how I do them. One of the things I want to go over first is the lower hull, which is actually step 1 on the kit. I've already done work on this side. I've filled the 2 holes here and this back portion. I've already put 2 of the, oh, that one's bent. Oh no. Yeah, they're both bent. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna fix it. Not that it kind of does matter, but I'm just not gonna fix it. I just don't really care enough. It's easy to fix. Just either remelt with the glue, tweak it, or just bend it, or just leave it alone like I am. But step 1 of the instructions, as you can tell, is to take the lower hull and to then glue in B8, which is this part, and then A11 and A10, which I've also done. I won't bother filling these holes. They're not going to be a problem once the tank is built, and it'll actually give us a good way to hold on to it when we go to paint it. We'll get to that much later. But one thing, when you're doing B8 and gluing that into the hole, you have really 2 areas to put it into. You have this slot, which is, as you can tell, not where it goes, and then this other slot. Now this slot itself doesn't have the ribbing at the bottom for it to sit in, so if you're not careful and not paying attention to the instructions, which tell you to put into this front one, you can easily misglue it here. Don't do that because it will fit here, but it's not where it goes. That's actually for if you're doing the battery tray, or excuse me, the motor tray, to make this motorized. But as you can tell, this has a little hook on it, and what it's for is when you put the upper hull on, that clips into the cutout by the turret ring, so you have it together. And they do this because if you're going to do it motorized, you need to be able to get to the batteries, so you would just pull this back and then lift up on the hull. Now we don't need that since we're not going to motorize this, but it does give you a good, I can put it back on properly. It does give you a good way just to see how it's going to go and dry fit it, and have it be a stable dry fit. So make sure you glue that part in the proper slot and with the proper direction. The lip on the hook should go towards the front, probably better like that, to front of the tank. Now the other thing that we're going to do in a second is we'll go through and I'll show how I filled these holes. Now there's a couple ways to do that. We'll get to that in a second. One of the other things that I have done is I went ahead and glued the barrel together. My goodness. I went ahead and glued the barrel together because it needs some time to sit before you can sand it. If you're ever going to try and sand a seam like this, don't glue it and then wait an hour and sand it. Wait at least overnight or until the glue has set. If you can tell, there's a weird color there. It's tan. But I used sprue goo. What sprue goo is styrene melted in a plastic cement, to a plastic cement, and it makes a good filler. Now this is actually some Orachi plastic from their Bradley kit, which they don't make anymore. The company's gone. But you can do it with Tamiya styrene, any styrene and any weld action cement. That was made with MEK, just because I found it sets a little bit faster and a little bit harder and easier to work with. So on the barrel halves, I laid that down on one side. On the other side, I used the thicker Tamiya cement, put them together, ran MEK along the seam, and then used little wooden clothespins pins or pegs, depending where you are in the world. And I used those to hold the barrel together, and they did a very good job. One of the things you do have to look out for when you're doing that is to make sure that they're clamping it properly and not off. If it's off center too much, it takes too much sanding to get them back to round. So just fiddle with it. You have a little bit before the glue actually really, or the cement starts to melt the styrene and bite, and it's harder to move. So we'll get to standing and taking care of that at a later time. The road wheels, like I said, are done. I'll go into more detail in a moment on a little bit with how to, or how I take care of road wheels like this. As for these holes in the hull, a few things to realize is right where these two holes are is right on top of these, I don't know exactly what the best thing to call them is. I forgot the proper name for them. They're not idler wheels, they're like little braces that keep the tracks up. Anyway, when you have those installed and the tracks on, the tracks mostly cover those, and this is mostly covered again by the drive sprocket and the tracks. But it's still a gaping hole, and it's easy to tell it's there, but it's not easy to tell if they're not filled completely. So that gives us a little bit of leeway, the best technique to use to fill these, or the best filler. In terms of filler, you have a lot of options. You have sprue goo, like we've already shown. You have the Vallejo or perfect plastic putty, or perfect putty plastic, whatever it's called. I don't like that. I like the Vallejo stuff. The problem with water-based fillers is they shrink a lot. Or you could use something, a lacquer-based filler like Bondo glazing and spot putty, which I really like. It's cheap, easy to find. Or the Tamiya putties. You have the Tamiya basic type or the Tamiya white. Problem with these is they will also shrink, and the problem is they kind of take a little while to dry, especially when you're doing something this large. But one of the things that I like to use, especially for reinforcement on joints on things like ships, but is I like to use it because, one, it doesn't shrink, and it's acrylic nail powder. And as you can imagine, it's a powder. If you go and have your nails done, or your wife or your girlfriend or whoever goes, they use this to build up stuff for fake nails and to glue fake nails down. And you can get it in a set with the powder and the liquid monomer. Just a word of caution, this stuff stinks really bad, so try not to use it too much, I guess, or make sure you're working in a well ventilated area. But it's good because you can mix this with the liquid monomer. You can actually mix it with MEK even, or you can mix it with super glue or CA glue. This is the Bob Smith Industries gap filling medium super glue. It also works with the thin and the thick, or the extra thick. And this will make if you mix it right and work it a little before you put it in, it's almost like a putty. Or you can mix it thinner and make it more like you can sort of paint it on. But it dries pretty quick, it dries hard, and it's easy to sand and take care of after the fact. Now, you could fill this with straight super glue, but normal super glue takes a long time to sand down or work down. So we're going to go ahead and fill these with this on camera. Amazing. Or it could be a total fail, and yay me. So the first thing to do is to look at the hole. Obviously this back hole is just a hole. This front one has been stopped up by that part, and this is just a hole. So what we're going to do is, as you can tell I've already done on the other side, is we're going to cover that one up so stuff won't fall out, and mostly fill up this with a plug, so to speak. So I have here some strip styrene, but as you can tell, if I pick up the hull, put it in, it's not narrow enough to fit into that gap. Now it is almost narrow enough that you can double it up and put it in there, but it's also easier and faster since we don't need this. We're not putting the motor in it. We can just trim part of it off, come in with a chisel or a sander or a file or anything that will get it flat, just sort of scrape it down till it's flat. Come back in with some, again, our cement, in this case MEK, and we will put some glue, put our strip. Now obviously we don't need all of this hanging off, so just go ahead and we'll cut it flush. And that has backfilled that hole, so when we go to fill it with our filler, it'll stay and it won't go anywhere. As for the back here, it's a little bit more work, and so what we'll do is we have a piece of plastic card. You don't need anything super big for this, so we'll just cut a chunk off. Again, put it on, get it to where you want it. Glue it on the inside real quick, or on the outside, or the inside of the gap. To hold it, position it better, and then come back on the inside with our cement and glue it. Push down. Now this evergreen stuff is soft and it glues and holds pretty quick. So then we're going to come along back with the same strip and put part of it in there to take up the bulk of that space. And if I can do it without popping parts off. I say it bites quick and then it pops right off. Because I'm on camera. At least my hands are. And we'll come back. Part of the other problem is I'm using a strip that's too long. So we'll hold it there best we can. We'll just cut it here real quick. Once it's in place, more glue, and I am using quite a bit of glue just because I am. You don't have to use this much glue when you go to do it. We'll grab our tweezers, make sure it's seated well, against the hull, and then those are ready for filling. Now you can go ahead and trim this while you're here, or I'll trim it while I'm there. Now, one of the things you do have to be careful of when you're filling this back portion, which you don't have to do again, but you have this little triangle piece on the rear of the top hull, and that's supposed to fit into that slot. So when you fill it, it can't. So what we have to do now is, if I can do this without screwing up again, it's hard to, I'm left-handed. There we go. So again, majority of it off, come back with a chisel or a hobby knife and just trim it as flush as you can get it. Doesn't need to be extremely flush. It doesn't matter if you go beneath the surface a little bit. Then we'll take a flory sander. I know I said in the intro video, or the tool video rather, I don't really like these because they're coarse, but for jobs like this where you need to remove a lot of material and you don't care how it looks afterwards, they come in quite handy. So that's sanded. That's not going to be a problem now when we go to fit this. So I'm going to move the camera in and we are going to fill these holes. So what I'm going to use to fill these is, of course, the nail powder and their monomer. Now what I'd like to do is I have a cheap deck of playing cards. And to make sure that the plastic coated ones, because they're slick, and these are very good for mixing epoxy and stuff like this nail powder on, because you can just throw it away. So we have our card, we have, or I have some of the nail powder in this, and we are going to go and get a pipette and their monomer, which don't spill this stuff, and this will melt styrene. It is a plastic cement type of chemical. I don't know exactly what it is. Don't ask, I don't know. I don't ask. I just use, put a little bit of that on the card, a few drops, and then we'll go ahead and make sure you're in shot. Put some of the powder on. You can see how the powder is dissolving in it pretty quick. And then you can use whatever tool you would like and sort of mix it. Make sure it's mixed well. We shouldn't need more than this. I want a little bit more powder in it. You can tell when you mix too much powder in because one, it gets chalky, and another, the color kind of changes. I like to work it for a minute till it gets a little bit thicker and sets up some. You can see how it's sort of like a paste or a really thin putty. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is, I know I mixed it with this, but we're going to apply it with a toothpick because I don't want to get it all over the hull. I almost knocked that over. Let's move that out of the way, shall we? So we'll get some of this, and we'll go back here to the part that we just backfilled and fill it in. You don't need to be super precise. This will level for the most part on its own. Again, we'll come fill these holes. Just don't go too crazy with it. You don't want to get it all over the place. And I mixed way more than I needed. Push it in. Make sure it's into where you want to fill. I always leave this a little proud, and then I'll trim it down later after it started to set some. And now, just leave it. It will sort of level on its own, depending on how you mixed it. As you can tell here on the card, it's getting to be more of a paste now. And you can actually work it some to the point that it's going to be sort of like an epoxy putty, sort of. But you don't really want to get this on your hands. I should be wearing gloves, but I didn't want to put gloves on. So there we are. We are filled. Again, you don't need to fill all the way down, and you don't really need to replace the raised portion or the rivets, because the drive sprocket will cover all of that. And if you look down, you can sort of see, I hope, how we have filled those a little bit higher and proud. And one of the cool things about this, using this, is once it's set up a little bit more, you can come back with something like a good sharp chisel. This is actually one I made. That's why it has no handle. Or hobby blade, and sort of carve off the top of it after it's set for a few minutes, and that makes it easier to level off, makes it easier to sand. But doing it this way ensures that you're not going to have a problem with not enough in the void. Now again, these areas are covered by tracks, and they'll be covered by dust, dirt, or mud, or whatever weathering effects you want to use. So again, you can skip this step entirely, but I wanted to do it to show you guys how it is that I deal with gaps. Now this is a good filler for lots of things, especially if you want to fill larger voids like on the bottom of the hull, because again, it won't shrink. It sets up consistently, so if it's dry on the outside, it's dry on the inside, and it doesn't take long, and it sands very easily. And that is something that super glue kind of lacks. Super glue won't shrink, but super glue can be a pain to sand. Again, you can mix this with their monomer, or you can mix it with super glue. Both ways work okay. I have found that the monomer gives you a little bit better results for leveling, but again, it's what it is. Now you can get this. This stuff is the Mia secret, not a secret anymore. And this is the natural pink color, which you can tell by the color of the powder. It is pink, and you can sort of tell if that it's sort of a pinkish hue, but not really. It's not really going to change the color much. Now I wouldn't use this for clear parts, but you can get this nail powder in a lot of different colors, including clear, in which case with the monomer it would become a clear transparent piece, which you could in theory use for fixing some portions of canopies or other clear parts. So that's how I deal with filling those gaps. Now the next thing we're going to do while that's sitting is the road wheels. And we only have 2 left to do. These are very simple. Like a lot of Tamiya kits, a lot of other kits in fact, you have poly caps that are going to go to each road wheel. Now for this kit, be careful. You have 2 different size poly caps. Along the outsides is P, sprue's P. Excuse me, the sprue is sprue P. And P1 is the one for the road wheels. P2 is the one for the drive sprockets. So don't confuse those. So we have the parts off of the sprue. To take the poly caps off, I just use a knife. Boom. Boom. Depending on your sprue cutters, it can be hard to cut these off with a sprue cutter. We have our MEK, which is open. And put the poly cap into the one part of the road wheel, flip the front part of the road wheel over, get our MEK, brush it on. Again, I'm using a lot, not that it needs to be, just because that brush holds a lot. You push them together. Now what I like to do is spin them until I can feel the glue bite, but also align the 2, I don't know if you can see it, the 2 nubs from when I took it off the sprue, and that's going to make sanding those a little bit easier. One of the other things you'll notice, again, we'll get to that in a second. Again, glue it, MEK. You don't need to be worried about being neat. But it doesn't take that much glue either. I'm just sort of get the hair out of there. Again, spin it till I feel, or I spin them till I feel the glue bite, and then it makes it harder to move, and I align the 2 sprue nubs. Now the reason I waited to sand these until they were glued together is it makes sanding it easier. One of the problems with sanding sticks is, to some degree, all of them are soft and kind of mushy. Like I went through, the Infinity sanders are really mushy. And if you went to use one of the Infinity sanders on one of these, you'll end up conforming this to this and changing the shape. If you press too hard, especially, you can round edges. The UMP 400-800 is doesn't have as much give, and with light pressure you can keep the shape just fine. But I'm going to use the floor sander again. For a sander I said I didn't like, I'm using this a lot. Again, these are rubber on the road wheels. Rubber gets affected by dirt and things on the track and can wear it and cause some wear patterns, so I'm not worried about these being as rough as they are. But keeping them together and using a sander doesn't have much give. Keeping them together allows the sander to really not round edges as easily as it would otherwise. So I just take it, make sure the sprue nubs are all gone. Again, I'm barely applying any pressure. I'm not really doing pressure at all downward. And slowly work your way around. One of the other things about these particular road wheels is on the edges, the outer edges here, you have a small little lip of flash, but sanding them like this takes care of that. Now I just sand them until the whole width of each road wheel has been sanded, and then I move on without staying in one place for too long, because you can still put a flat spot if you're not careful. So that road wheel is done. This one, you can go at the sprue nubs. I try not to just go like that on one place, because you will flatten them. These are round, so I move around. Also keep track of the sanding marks that you see. If you're getting all of them on this side and barely on this side, you're tilted too far. So just try and go at it as flat as you can. It's very simple, easy to do. And I do this for any road wheel halves that I have to glue together. I don't sand them until I have them together, and that makes sanding easier. Because you have to go around each road wheel really the same amount of time. Right? I mean, the time it took me to do to the two halves is the same. I would have had to do one half with the same amount of time. So gluing them together first also helps you save some time sanding, and sanding is very, very boring. Now back to the filler we used on the hull. Let me close the glue. I meant to mention it when we did it. I did not keep this card out and keep whatever you used in terms of toothpick or whatever on the card. And this gives you a good idea when the glue is set and hard. One, I know that I'm pushing on this and my nail's digging in, but not a lot. And obviously you can tell that the toothpick was glued down mostly. But you can tell right now this is sort of a rubbery consistency, to where it's hard but still a little bit pliable, or set, it's a little bit pliable. So at this point, what we're going to do is take the hull, come along with our hobby knife, and just sort of, as best we can do it, shave off the top of each one of those areas that we filled. And as you can tell here, hopefully, it's still filled, and it's still filled, but it's more level. It's almost level with the surface now. And then with the back one, same thing. And you get that, and you do, and can end up with the same exact height on what you need. So that's what I done on this side, and just a little bit of sanding and you're set. So that's how I dealt with those. So again, just let it set up a little bit more and then go sand it. And if it needs filled again, you can use whatever filler you would like, because it's such a small amount now. You can come back with the Bondo and fill them in, and you're not going to have a problem. So that's how that is dealt with. And in terms of instructions, we've done step 1, we've done part of step 2 and part of step 3, but the main work that you need to worry about in terms of this kit, the lower hull, filling those gaps, the road wheels, sanding them, and then sanding the barrel. Other than that, most of what we're going to do is going to be very straightforward, very simple, and very fast. So next part, we'll get through a lot more of the kit. So again, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Hope I can actually get this done and out, and it doesn't sit on a hard drive for 6 months to a year. Otherwise, I'm going to have to edit the beginning and say, I know what I said, it's the first part of 2019, but it's really 2021 now, and yada yada. So thanks for watching. Excuse all of the ums in the video. I'm trying not to say anymore, but man, it's hard. It's really hard. So thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.